Good evening to viewers. We thank you so much for joining us in this edition of the 6 p.m. newscast on Equinox Television. Francois Bozizé, the former president of the Central African Republic, has up to date spent 1 month out of his country after his government was toppled by the Seleka rebels, and 2 persons are confirmed dead in 2 separate road accidents that occurred between yesterday and today in the littoral region and also in the southwest region of the country. And our guest tonight tells us about moral education in the academic milieu. This is the Primetime Newscast on Equinox Television. To viewers, we thank you so much for joining us in this edition of the 6 p.m. newscast on Equinox Television. We begin right away in the southwest region of the country, where 1 person has died in a fatal road accident that occurred in Mutengene, in that part of Cameroon. The accident happened after a heavy-duty truck came head-on with a bike rider. Staff Lydia Nabila tells us more in the following report.
Inhabitants of Mutengene expressed regret after a failed attempt at saving the life of a man who perished in this road accident. The victim, who was on his way to work as early as 4 a.m., was hit and pressed to the wall of a house by this heavy-duty truck. Eyewitnesses explained that the driver of the truck was sleeping on the steering wheel. The accident has left the population of Mutengene worried, as I reviewed the scene of a heavy timber truck which crushed scores of persons to death years ago. The corpse of the victim has been transported to the mortuary, as police in Mutengene have opened investigations.
Another accident is that which occurred in village here in the economic capital Douala, where 1 person was killed in the said accident. It occurred yesterday here precisely in the village neighborhood, and the victim, whose name we got as Gael Kango, was on board her own vehicle, which overturned and hit an electricity pole, and she then overturned several times, and she died as she was being transported to the Lakantini hospital here in the economic capital Douala. Meantime, potential drivers in Cameroon have sat in for the examination to obtain driver's license, and Annabella in the following report tells us that irregularities were recorded in most of the examination centers. Her report.
Examinations to obtain a driver's license were written across the national territory last April 20, 2013. Hundreds of Cameroonians turned out at the various centers to take part in the exams. But at the center in Kongsamba, some irregularities were recorded. Certain candidates were really disappointed, as their names never appeared on the list. Meanwhile, they actually registered.
Je suis franchement déçu de constater que ni mon nom, ni celui d'aucun de ces élèves ne figure sur la liste des candidats.
At other centers, the number of students present was higher than the number registered, like in Yabasi, and they are giving a clear indication or impression that some mischievous persons registered but did not turn out for the exams.
Ça rend suspect l'école.
Observers say such irregularities puts to question the authenticity of driver's licenses brandished by most car owners who at times do not master the highway code. The exam to obtain driver's licenses was instituted by the government in collaboration with transport syndicates to reduce the frequency of road accidents on our highways.
Now in the central region of the country, in Yaoundé, work is yet to resume at the University Teaching Hospital over 1 week after workers grounded their tools, demanding the payment of their March 2013 salaries. Roland Akon in the following report tells us that retired workers yesterday joined the course, also demanding the payment of their dues owed them by the hospital management. His report.
The incomplete payment of salaries for the month of March is annoying to some personnel of the Yaoundé University Teaching Hospital, CHU. It is one of the reasons why they are still protesting in front of the hospital.
We are here, we are in different banks, and some banks are said to have been paying, but BSEC is the seat. More than 2/3 of the personnel here are in BSEC. Why is it that they go and pay those who are 5, 10, 20 in the bank, and where we have 200, 300, they are unable to pay?
But payment of salaries seems not enough for the hospital strikers to end their protest. They are making other demands, like the application of the 2008 collective convention.
So the collective convention is a manner of harmonizing all those who are recruited in the hospital so that they should have a uniform salary.
And the payment of code pass, 30% of income generated by the hospital. Retrenched and retired staffs of the hospital have also joined the protest, demanding payment of their retrenchment and retirement dues.
He has to give all the dues of those personnel before they go. It should be done before they go.
But fulfilling these conditions will not be easy for the management of a hospital, which has witnessed a steady drop of its monthly income, estimated at 800 million since 2009. The slump in the income of CHU is now blamed on inadequate and obsolete equipment in the hospital.
Tous les services laissent à désirer. Il n'y a rien de normal au CHU.
She says in the delivery room, there is no AC.
Il n'y a pas de climatiseur et la salle d'accouchement est bloquée partout.
Most beds in the admission wards have been broken with no light.
En hospitalisation, tous les lits sont cassés. Les lits sont cassés. Ce sont les malades qui remplacent les ampoules là-bas quand ils entrent.
Professor Maurice Kamp has been general manager of CHU since 2001. The expert in reanimation reanimated dying hospital by the time, but today some of his personnel want him no more. When we approached him to get his own side of the story, he announced a press conference soon over the matter.
A press conference, of course, built in the days ahead to address the issue of the striking workers of the University Teaching Hospital. Now, some 4 female divisional officers have been appointed by Head of State Paul Biya in a decree he signed yesterday in the central region of the country. They are to head the Ngaoundéré Free, the Garoua Free, and also Monatele and Biko rather localities, respectively. The said decree also saw the dismissal of the DO of Menganga, Celestine Meli, after he was accused of raping a local, and the DO for Douala 5, that is Jano Tamanjo, has simply gone on retirement. We shall be coming back to that with images in our subsequent newscast. Now it is 1 month today after the Seleka rebels in the Central African Republic toppled the government of Francois Bozize, causing him to flee. The embattled Central African Republic president has since then been seeking refuge in Cameroon at the Hilton Hotel, and reports say the former Central African Republic leader is also seeking asylum in Benin. Meanwhile, top UN officials have told those who seized power from Bozize to establish security and put a halt at all abuses against the Central Africans. That was yesterday when a UN official visited that part of the continent, and so far the civilians have been suffering from killings, looting, and also human rights violation. Now, in the central region of the country, Richard Njimeli, the film producer, the film producer of The Last Predator, has reportedly been transferred from the CNPS hospital to a clinic in Yaoundé. Attempts at finding out what he is suffering from were futile by our Yaoundé-based correspondents, and he had earlier been receiving treatment for a fractured arm he acquired from his alleged kidnappers. And just to note that he was abducted last month by some yet-to-be-identified individuals. Now we talk sports football, where the Sports and Physical Education Ministry and FECA Food are still at daggers drawn as to who has the prerogative to appoint a new coach to head the Lions Den. And this is after the ministry called for tender to select a team coach to manage the Lions squad. Details with senior reporter Christopher.
At the time when the announced replacement of Jean-Paul Akono at the helm of the national squad hits all sporting milieus, people are tempted to ask about the procedure that leads to the recruitment of coaches for the national team. The Cameroon Football Governing Body, FECAFOOT, claims the right to designate Lions team coach after studying job tenders and after establishing a short list by order of merit based on experience, background and salary bids, to name just a few. Then sends the short list to the minister for appreciation. The appointment thus comes from the minister. Now comes time for the contract signing by the Ministry of Sports, the FECAFOOT and the chosen one. This is at least what the texts say, even though the case of Cameroon is pretty different. Glaring examples have been recorded these past years, as Augustin Thierry Edzua opted for the last on the list in 2007, choosing German-born Otto Pfister to the great annoyance of FECAFOOT. FECAFOOT now unilaterally recruited Denis Lavin in 2011, and after he was suspended, Sports Minister Adum Garwa engaged Jean-Paul Akono, to the greatest disappointment of the football governing body. These table tennis-like punches between FECAFOOT and the Ministry for Sports and Physical Education solve no purpose, as the two sides deny to agree on a common choice of who can truly be a qualified and befitting coach for the indomitable Lions of Cameroon.
Senior reporter Christo B there telling us just how a new person to head the Lions Den is going to be selected, and that does it for this segment of the news. Up next is Talking Point. Good evening to you viewers. We thank you so much for joining us tonight on Talking Point. We are going to be talking about moral education in the academic milieu, like I earlier said in our headlines. And we have the privilege to have a pedagogic inspector from the Ministry of Secondary Education here in the economic capital, Douala. Good evening, Mr. Melon Maurice, and thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Good evening, Madam Mefo, for inviting me.
Like I earlier said, I was talking about moral education in the academic milieu, in the secondary as well as primary schools today. How can you assess what measures are schools, or do schools actually put in place today to guide children, especially those that are just gaining maturity? You know, it's very difficult dealing with children between 13 to 20 in secondary schools today. What do schools actually put in place to maybe guide these children of this age range?
Well, if you are asking me what schools do, schools still do a lot. Imagine that all the staff, men and women, day and night, they are appointed to educate children. And you can go right from the definition of the verb to educate to know that it is not an easy task. To educate, the Oxford Learners Dictionary defines it as to give both intellectual and moral training to the young people. Since I'm a teacher before being appointed an inspector, I'm still a teacher nowadays. And you therefore understand that giving both moral and intellectual training is not easy. The teacher at school, you may say, is in charge of giving the intellectual, but the teacher equally gives moral training to the child. See, for instance, politeness is still taught in our school, be primary or secondary. We do teach our young people to be polite, to respect hierarchy. All this, our school still does it, but look at the parents themselves. Do parents carry out their own share of the task? This is a question I may ask you, Madam Mefo.
So just to find out from you, you say the schools, they have a greater role to play as far as instilling morality and also educating the children are concerned. But do you see this reflection? Do you see them giving you this respect, giving you this morality? Do you see them portraying the morality you do teach them?
Some students, in fact, well, I may say the great majority of students still pay back, you know, what the staff, what the teachers and all the administrative staff do for them. But a minority of students may be a problem. And I don't think that the teachers are the only people to blame. I think the education community is to blame. Look at the parents themselves. They are irresponsible parents who don't look at what children do, be at home or at school. Some don't even read the report cards, the remarks that the school write on the report card of the children. There are children having 100 hours of absences in a term. You sit in the school waiting for the child, for the parent to come and complain. The parent will not come. Take an example like that.
So this debate was actually triggered by one student of a secondary school, from one student actually that is said to have burnt the house of the boyfriend, the alleged boyfriend, and as we got, and because of, we hear that it is as a result of betrayal. So how do you react to such an information, a 13-year-old student, a female student, having a boyfriend and burning a house? What's your reaction to that?
My own reaction is, as I said earlier, the greater majority of children still abide to what we teach them. I mean, they respect our moral values. But you still find a minority, you know, some 5 or 10%, that still go aside. But as I said earlier, it is not our system of education alone that's to blame. I say the society at large is to blame.
But what you are saying is that somehow we could blame the system of education. Is that what you are saying?
Not actually the system of education is to blame, since moral education is still being taught in our schools.
So we are trying to maybe find out from you the issue of moral education, and we are talking about from one student that is said to have burnt the house of the purported boyfriend that was here in the economic capital, Douala. And now let us find out from you, our guest tonight, whether who is supposed to play the most vital role here. Is it the teachers, the parents, or the society?
Well, I think the parents and the society here are more to blame than the teachers. You know, at school, you have the civics teacher who is in charge of teaching the children, let's say, moral values, the respect of the hierarchy, the respect of our institutions. That's the civics teacher as a role. But the whole staff is equally in charge of training our children to be polite, to respect the hierarchy as well. Parents, I'm really pointing a finger hand at the parents that are to blame, because you have nowadays parents who don't care, who don't sit down and talk with children. I don't know if you understand what I mean. I mean parents who at times never even meet the children at home. They come very late in the night. They don't ask children, how was school today? Did you encounter any problem? They don't. And those children are tempted to do just any type of thing. If parents themselves do not contribute a lot in teaching moral values to their children, the school authorities and the staff, they cannot alone do it. So I think the parents and the community
If I do remember properly, I think that some years back, I should say about 5 or 6 years back,
yes,
teachers used to dedicate some few minutes in the classroom just to educate students morally, about 10 to 15 minutes before or after lectures. Do you still see that in schools today?
Well, in primary schools...
Because you are talking about teachers in general, not
yes,
only moral education teachers.
Yes. Moral education teachers are those who are committed really to do the job. But every teacher, I myself, even today, I went to a school. Let me tell a story. I will not name the school. What happened when I went to the school? There was a child who did a very terrible thing. But let me tell you, it's a child of St. Kim, around 11. The child took the report card from the school, went and got it photocopied, then copied now marks that he never had, and brought to the mother a report where he had 7.5 on 20 as an average. The mother now looked at the report card and wondered. Then asked the child that, look, I must know who has given you this report card. And the child foolishly said, it's the principal of the school who wrote the marks. You know that in the school, the principal is not a person entering marks in the computer. So there are other VPs, vice principals, or senior discipline masters or teachers who enter marks in the report cards. So the mother now came to the school, and it was discovered that the child has been changing his mark since. Look at the moment the parent is discovering now. For the parent has not been coming to school to collaborate with the teachers. Had the parent come earlier, the parent would have discovered that the child was a liar, that the mark that he was bringing back to the house was not the real mark that he was scoring in
so
class.
How do you assess now the relationship between the teachers and parents now?
Well,
how do you look at it?
The relations between teachers and parents, some parents still don't know the role of a teacher or how the collaboration between parents and teachers should be. Some years back, in a lycée that I will not name, the school discovered that a child was writing to some, I don't know whether which, in France, and the correspondent has come to the school a letter. The school seized the letter, called the mother for more than a month for the mother to show off at school and hear about the complaint. Imagine that you have a child in a school and the administration calls you for more than a month, you don't show off. How irresponsible you are. Because the school is there to communicate to the parent things that are not going on well. If a child is caught corresponding with very bad people, the parents have to know about that. And the parent took more than a month to come. This means that some parents still don't know the role of the teacher and the staff in the education of the child. Who is the person to gain? Let's say the community, the whole community, but the parents are the first people to gain. If you send a child somewhere for education, don't just remain at home and say, okay, this is the teacher's affair. The school calls you once, twice, thrice. For more than a month, you don't show off. It means that you are an irresponsible parent. That's it.
So how, according to you, do you assess some of these structures where children mostly visit? By talking about places like maybe the society now, maybe churches and even schools. How do you assess? Because these are some of the areas where children do gain a lot of education because they have to associate with other children, they have to meet other people, new faces. How do you look at maybe the education they obtain from all these structures that I named?
Well, Madam, you have named the church. I think the church equally teaches. If they are good churches. I myself am a Roman Catholic. I did all my primary school in a Catholic school where we were taught how to be polite, how to go to church, to praise God, to respect the hierarchy and so on. Till today, I don't find any wrong thing that religion has taught me. So I think taking a child to church, if it's a good church, because there are some churches around, I doubt that they are good churches. So if you know that you are a member of a church and that church teaches good moral values to people, take your children equally to church. Church can help in such a situation.
Schools do help too, and others do not.
Yeah, well, school do help. When you say others do not, this is a problem. I mean, these are personal situations. Not all our children are not all rascals. You talked about a child who got a house burned down, but that's a case, let's say How long have you been a journalist?
I've been a journalist for more than 2 years now.
2 years now. How many times have you heard of such instances of a child burning a house down?
This is not the first time.
This is not the first time?
Not the first time.
All right. But
not burning houses.
can you imagine the millions of students that we have in
cases.
Cameroon? And if you have 2 or 3 cases, it means that it's a very, very minority that's concerned.
But it
So
doesn't
things-
matter about what the child has done, but we are talking about some of the things that children do that is projecting immorality or showing or giving the impression that maybe something is not done some way to keep the children or on right track, on the track. Maybe in the academic milieu, maybe in the house or where the children are coming from.
Madam, you were talking about the society. Let me quote an instance. You know, our children look around and they see things, okay? And children can be very fast to know things even faster than us parents. When you are in a society like our own, and there are people who almost do nothing, when they call somebody a fayman, do you know what a fayman does? When he goes out driving all these VIP cars and so on, and he's passing, children admire them. But there are people living in total immorality. So our society nowadays is full of such persons who for some students are models. For some students, I say. Because if it were a greater number of our students, I think we'll be suffering and suffering nowadays. Just a small minority still look at those people and praise them. The majority does not. I'm very sorry to say it. The majority does not. And that's why, as an inspector, I'm very calm. I'm not boiling. Because if you hear such instances here and there in all our towns and villages, then there will be a problem.
According to you, it's just a minority.
No, it's just a minority.
Thank you so much, Mr. Menon Maurice, for joining us tonight on Talking Point.
The pleasure was mine.
And to you viewers, we thank you so much for joining us in this edition of the Primetime Newscast on Equinox Television. Have fun and stay in the company of our programs. And good evening to you all.